Hey, truckos.
Truckos and truckos. It's Isaac.
It's Josh.
And today we are bringing electronic components to a small town in Arizona.
A small town called Holbrook, if I recall correctly.
That is correctly. 14,000 pounds of transistors and waveform modifiers. And we are going to talk on this trip in a kind of a sleepy way, at least on my part, because I have made life decisions. Is a man, the myth, the legend, Werner the Hedgehog.
We have watched 2 Werner Herzog films this week in anticipation of this episode.
We've watched one and then watched one movie about Werner Herzog.
It's a Werner Herzog movie in the same way. Whatever.
Yeah.
Werner Herzog is the star of that movie, not the director. But anyway.
Josh, why don't you list every Werner Herzog movie you've seen?
Oh, let me see. No, I'm not going to attempt that.
Okay, I can do it. I've seen fewer than Josh has.
Yes.
I've seen Burden of Dreams, which is not a Herzog movie, but a movie about Herzog. I've seen Grizzly Man. I've seen Cave of Forgotten Dreams, another Dreams one. And I've seen Bad Lieutenant, Port of Call, New Orleans.
Yes. Bit of a rhyme scheme happening.
Yes, Josh has seen more than that.
Yes.
Including some rarities, some hard-to-find-os.
Well, sort of.
And
there's a really good one about the best ski jumper ever to live, where we see him soaring through the air with like the kind of horrified look on his face that comes as a result of the wind blowing your cheeks back.
Yeah.
In super slow motion with like austere operatic music playing.
Right. So Josh owns one of those T-shirts from IFC where they do up famous directors like they were heavy metal bands.
Mm-hmm.
Herzog is the shirt that Josh has.
It's a Megadeth thing, except it's Herzog.
And
let's just spend this whole episode listing my Herzog credentials.
Well, the thing that I want to stress before we get into the Herzog is that as Borges is to literature for Josh, so Herzog is to movies. He's his guy.
It's true.
He's his guy. He's his go-to guy.
We've seen some of Herzog's signature films this week for Isaac's first time, and he has kept his opinion on them mostly secret from me,
so that we could talk about it on Trust.
Yeah. What is this?
So the deal with Herzog, right?
Mm-hmm.
The deal with Herzog is this: he's German. He's the most intensely German human being.
Technically, he's Bavarian.
Right, which is a part of Germany.
Fine.
And he's the most intensely German human being because he is very verbal, very philosophical. He likes to make broad categorizations. He speaks in an accent that wields him instantaneous gravitas on a very high level.
Yes. He is,
and it might appear to the untutored that he has no sense of humor.
He is a very 19th century individual.
He is perhaps more. I mean, his particular blend of being German is not unrelated to the fact that most of the ideas we have about being the most German that aren't Hitler related come from 19th century Vienna, which is in Austria. So God knows what that's about. But you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's empiricism.
Yes.
You know, and
a tendency to philosophize, a kind of natural ability to comport in dangerous situations.
Yes, and an artist who thinks on multi-levels and likes to construct puzzle boxes.
Sort of, yeah.
Not quite so much maybe as some, but he's not overt about it or show-offy about it.
Yeah. There is I suppose thinking about it more, puzzle box is actually pretty accurate.
Yeah.
In the way he blends the real and the non-real in his documentary.
Yeah, there's little winky things that he does, which is like, I'm doing something quite clever actually, but he doesn't ram it into your face.
I think we should say, while summarizing Herzog, that he is known, particularly in his documentaries, for practicing what he calls the portrayal of the ecstatic truth rather than the accountant's truth. There's one.
He's a Herodotus.
Huh?
As historians go. He's the kind of guy who would put a giant tortoise in the middle of his history of the Peloponnesian War.
Yes, exactly. It's true. There are things like that, and there's hints in his films about like where he's kind of cheating you or using impressionism. Like there's a film, The White Diamond, a documentary about a scientist building a balloon so he can take samples from rainforest canopies, and the last time he had a last time he had a cinematographer on him on a similar project, that cinematographer ended up dying in a balloon-related accident. And so Herzog, being the cinematographer in this film, comes with all of its stakes, and they make it look like Herzog's going to go on this dangerous journey, and it's kind of left uncertain whether or not he really did. There is some footage of like the camera floating around in an ethereal manner, bumping into trees and stuff, but it's clearly not captured from the balloon.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So that particular sequence that you described really gets to a number of the core things that I have to say about Herzog in a particular way. So the dude is not particularly...
I don't know what I'm bumping up against, but I'm just kind of determined to ignore it.
Well, that hasn't been working out, has it? You're caught on a pillar.
Talkin.
Yeah, no, this is not particularly interesting, although I'm liking the particular shininess and color scheme of this truck.
I'm also enjoying the lack of concern.
And among passers-by, and this is LA. We're in LA. These people are not concerned about your bullshit.
That's true. Anyway, what is that?
Anyway, so
I want to know if we violently disagree about it.
So Herzog is not particularly concerned with truth.
Well, he is concerned with truth, but not...
He is more concerned with beauty than with truth.
I would say that he... Well, I'll quibble later. Go on.
Right. More than beauty, he is concerned with creativity. And more than creativity, he is concerned with the project of the creative man.
Yeah.
Man.
Well...
man. The creative man. Pretty much the creative man.
I would say that he is quite agnostic to the concerns of the creative woman. Yes, true.
And he's a questing type. He likes to go into the wilderness, or talk about people who go into the wilderness. He likes to test himself at the extremes, or talk about people who test themselves to extremes. And he likes to bring back some ethereal bounty, which is canonized and made sacrosanct basically by the fact that it's him doing it, because he's the guy who knows what the art is.
Sure.
And that's an old-fashioned way to be.
Totally.
You know, I think that when Josh says that Herzog is a man of the last century, he's absolutely onto something, because maybe not the 19th, but certainly he's a man of the 20th century through and through.
Yeah.
He comes from the Norman Mailer Hemingway tradition of macho artists.
Yes.
But he is less of an embarrassment than many of them are.
Part of that, I think, is because of his acute sense of irony.
Yes.
This
is an ironical human being.
Yes. But it's not as if he is doing the entire, creative soldier thing ironically, you know?
Absolutely not.
He does... And I think it's hard to deny that he does find... he creates objects of value with that process, as antique a process as it is.
I think I'm not one to say that process does not produce objects of value, because I have no need to throw any babies out with any bathwater.
Sure.
Being not personally, culturally implicated in any of the consequences of this dude's pretty cavalier lack of concern for the lives of the people who work for him.
Well, I would say that if that's an impression you got from Burden of Dreams, it does slightly play that up in a misleading way. He mentions, he's allowed to mention on camera that someone died, and it makes it sound as though they died as a consequence of working on this film, which is not true. It was, I think, if I recall, it was just that there was a plane crash in the ecosystem of supplies being flown back and forth in this part of the world while he was making the film.
Yeah, so their death was caused by the fact that he was doing what he was doing.
Well, I'm not even sure if the shipment was related to
I think
the film he was...
it's heavily implied that.
Well, it is heavily implied in the film.
Do you think that's part of the song and dance of Werner Herzog?
I read about this at some point, and I can't remember the particulars now. But
so that's part of his self-dramatization right there,
or it may be part of Blank's dramatization of him in this case.
As you were saying before, though, his former cinematographer died whilst ballooning.
This is a different film.
Yes, I know, but this is I was connecting data points there,
Yes, yes, yes.
as one might, and he's a dude for whom the death of somebody in pursuit of art is not an uncomplicated negative. I'll put it that way.
That's true.
He is a man who would be right there with the romance of dying in the pursuit of a good shot.
Yeah,
right.
Totally. I mean, there can be no doubt that he puts himself in harm's way,
and
probably
and the people who work for him. Although they're all consenting adults.
Sure.
So yeah, it's a little bit of an old-fashioned attitude. He is also relatively oblivious to culture in very specific and interesting ways.
Yeah, he's not a guy who watches television.
Yeah, and I remember the anecdote about how he had known this man for 30 years and had never put it together that he was gay.
Right.
Despite the fact that the man was an out gay man. It just hadn't occurred to Herzog.
Yeah.
Which I feel like that's somewhat telling. It's like he drinks deep of the universe which he creates for himself out of his factoids, but he doesn't have much time for stuff that is not a part of a particular relatively circumscribed set of narratives that he likes to play with. So my question about this man, right, is that when we see him in his youth in Burden of Dreams, there's not very much irony there, I would say.
I think there's more than you think.
Okay, well here, I mean, that's my main question.
Yeah.
I feel like the redeeming value of Herzog is in the fact that he is a joker. Not like the Joker, but that he gets the funny.
Yeah, I definitely think he does.
And I want to know whether this is something that has developed over time, whether the dance that he does with his own persona in the culture changed him, or whether it was like the part he was born to play. That's my question. Let me go into that a little bit more.
Why can't they break?
If you want somebody to do like a serious, like pretentious documentary in pop culture, more often than not, you will either have somebody doing a Werner Herzog impression do the voiceover, or you will have Werner Herzog himself do the voiceover, because he's more than happy to do that.
Has Werner Herzog done voiceovers in other people's documentaries?
On the Boondocks, he plays himself essentially.
I mean,
making a documentary about.
He's definitely been a voice actor. He's also in the English dub of that Miyazaki film, The Wind Rises.
Yeah.
Plays a plays a German in the run up to World War II, going, "Germany will blow up." Germany will blow up.
The point is that he is entirely willing to point out not only that he understands the place that he holds in pop culture, but to embrace it and to play with it.
Yes.
Which is not, despite everything that we've said, the behavior of a self-serious individual.
Sure. Something I know about Burden of Dreams. There is a famous monologue in that film. It is kind of the climax of the film, where Herzog stands in the rain, the jungle, and speaks at length about how disgusting he finds it all. Like, he keeps saying things like, "The birds do not sing here; they only screech in pain." And he's capable of being just extremely effusive and intense on the subject of the horrors of the jungle.
Right.
But the thing is, we know, like Les Blanc admitted, that scene is kind of staged. He had said something to that effect on a boat while the camera wasn't on him, and Blanc basically said, "Hey, can you go stand over here and talk some more about that?" And so I think it's an important thing about that scene. Not to say he's not sincerely expressing his feelings, but I think there is also an element of farce there.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there's definitely the sort of thing where if Blanc wasn't giggling very quietly to himself, while Herzog calls, says there's no harmony in nature. It's just a what of collective murder?
There is a harmony in the world. It is a harmony of overwhelming and collective murder.
Yes, there you go.
Oh, my Herzog impression is not in its greatest state right now.
It never is when you want it to be.
Yeah, I know. It
comes out in beautiful little spurts occasionally, but it's not something that you can summon at will. But that is... A, if you haven't seen that scene, you should see that scene. B, you should see the movie instead, because the scene is like 10 times more effective in the context of the movie.
Yeah.
But C,
it's all on Hulu Plus.
The impression that it can leave you with is that this is a dour,
And he is.
Yeah, but he's also hilarious.
Yes. He's very hilarious, and you can tell in his fiction films. Mm-hmm. Like it's black humor.
Yeah.
But God, I love Bad Lieutenant, and it's the best Nick Cage movie. It's definitely a director who understands that if you are casting Nicolas Cage, you need to know that you're casting the nuclear option.
Yes.
And the humor in those scenes, like it's like atrocious things, like a hard-boiled cop pointing his service weapon at like an old disabled woman's head, threatening her for information on a kid who like has some info on a gang dispute. Like this cop is constantly blowing everything way out of proportion, but then also going and having like childlike tender moments with his prostitute girlfriend, showing him the place where he like buried something precious to him as a kid, and there he could never find it. And the way he turns out to be a hero in the end, like this is a hysterical movie, and I think it's very telling of Herzog's sense of humor. Yeah. And I also want to describe a scene from another Les Blanc documentary called Werner Herzog Eats His Shoe, which I think is pretty relevant to what we're discussing. I think this movie came out before Burden of Dreams. I think this is an episode of Herzog's life before he shot Fitzcarraldo, but it's a very short film. Herzog lost a bet that someone couldn't release a film. They did release the film, and so he had to eat his shoe in front of an audience. And there's a scene later in the day when he's like finishing off his shoe, because he's a man of his word and all that.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's finishing off his shoe in a restaurant surrounded by familiars, and he says directly to Les Blanc's camera, like, "Filmmaking makes us clowns. Look at me." And like it's another clear case of him like being morose and ridiculous, but also somewhat intentionally clownish about it.
This is true. I mean, Herzog's general attitude like reminds me of fucking sake, what's the name of the fatty fat man?
The Fatty Fat Man?
Yeah, no, the best director, the fat man. The big, the rosebuds, frozen peas, the guy,
Fucking Stanley Kubrick.
No.
Rosebud, that's...
Not fat enough.
That's, Orson Welles.
Thank you very much. I could not think of that name because I was too busy thinking of George Orwell, which is a name that has one syllable in common with it. But anyway...
And H.G. Wells. It's a confusing little pool of names.
Anyway, Orson Welles. Have you ever seen F for Fake?
I've wanted to, but I have not.
We should watch F for Fake.
Sure.
We might watch F for Fake as my choice in the next movie.
I know that it involves him like blustering around with a cape and saying like, and for my next trick.
Yes, exactly. It's F for Fake is a movie about art forgery, wherein Wells is also playing with documentary filmmaking in the way that Herzog likes to play with documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
But of course, because it's Orson Welles, for whom everything is at all times turned up to 11, and who is a sloppy fucking man in all kinds of ways, the hand is tipped all over the place,
right.
And he's wearing a cape and doing magic tricks and sleight of hand, and saying, "Oh, but am I lying to you? Perhaps I'm lying to you. What is fake? Is this fake? Did I make it all up?" And
yes.
And like Herzog is that,
but he doesn't tip
impulse.
his hand.
in an extremely self-possessed individual, you know.
I don't know that Herzog is as self-possessed as Orson Welles. Like Herzog would never try to shoot a wine commercial but drunk. So
that's what I'm saying.
Recognize words, excellence.
Herzog is much more self-possessed.
Self-possessed. I misunderstood. I thought you had called him self-obsessed.
No, self-possessed.
Yes.
Herzog is a grown-up.
That's true.
And
yes, he knows what he's doing.
Yes, and he's very deeply in control of his brand.
Yeah.
Which,
although, he also doesn't value his brand that much. Like, he has very little shame in just doing a couple of documentaries for the Discovery Channel, in utter self-parody. Like, there's this bit where he did a documentary on the Arctic, and he tried to put his stamp on it. He's interviewing people about their dreams in the Arctic, and he gets a few interesting stories out of people, but mostly it's just it's a kind of fluffy movie. Mm-hmm. And he said, like, this will not be a documentary about fluffy penguins, but he does have to do one penguin bit in the movie. So what he does is he finds the penguin that wanders away from its pack towards the mountains.
Oh my god, but that's such a beautiful scene. That one's on Tumblr, right?
Yeah, no, it is.
And,
it
like
is
all
great.
the time, that particular GIF set is on Tumblr.
Yeah.
And so he manages to pull out the art moment.
Yeah,
right?
he does. But
even when he's
at the same
it up.
time, this is so just fucking Herzog found the one penguin who would be the subject of a Herzog documentary if he were a person.
Well,
and spends about 5 minutes just saying he is wandering toward his death.
Well, so here's the thing, right? So it's like, what's the difference between it's like, I feel like self-parody is not an inherent negative if you're on the joke.
Oh yeah.
If you know what I mean, because it's like one coherent way of dealing with being a famous artist is to continuously riff on your public persona.
Yeah.
And it's like, because it's madness to try to pretend that it doesn't exist.
Sure.
It's madness to try to pretend that you're a normal person. It's also mad to try to pretend that you are the genius that everybody says you are, because you're not. And that way, Orson Welles lies. Or, maybe not even Orson Welles. Like, that way, whatever megalomaniac you can think of at the moment lies.
Isn't it weirdly easy to imagine Herzog at a party explaining to someone like he's just met but who knows him by reputation, like, oh yes, I am supposed to be very intense, it is, I don't know, part of my persona.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, Herzog goes into everything he does knowing what he is known for, and tweaks it a little bit here and there.
Yeah.
And so I found Cave of Forgotten Dreams very difficult to get through. I fell asleep during it a number of times. I saw it in a theater. The seats were comfy. But he does this little twist at the end where it's like, you've been waiting for Herzog to get all Herzog on this shit, right?
Yeah.
And he's been extremely restrained and mostly been focused on getting really pretty 3D shots of these caves.
Yeah,
and,
that is a rare film where he feels...
And, telling you how difficult it was and, what had to be done in order to do it.
That's a rare film where he seems just more interested in his subject than anything he could say about it.
Yeah. And then, near the end of the film, he invents out of whole cloth a laboratory facility downriver from the cave where people are cloning dinosaurs.
I don't remember that.
It's there. It's in the movie. He posits that it exists. He doesn't say that it exists. He posits that it exists.
Interesting.
Right?
Very interesting.
And there is a scene of a digital mock-up of this facility.
I don't remember that at
It's
all.
in the movie, unless I started dreaming. But I remember people mentioning it in the reviews.
I hope you didn't do that. That's really wonderful.
Because like, Herzog knows you're expecting some Herzog from him, so he goes,
Sure.
"Oh, you want some Herzog?"
Wow.
So I mean, I think that bespeaks a good set of instincts.
Yeah.
But I want to I want to ask two questions.
Okay.
My first question is, what is it about Herzog to you specifically, Josh, that speaks to you?
Okay. Would you like to ask the other question before I answer that one?
Yeah, the other question is this sort of this sort of now particularly old-fashioned artistic machismo, you know, which I think Herzog survives into the century by parodying himself before other people can parody him,
Sure.
if you know what I mean, or engaging in the parody of himself.
Yeah.
And that if he tried to maintain the attitude that he has in Burden of Dreams, which is summed up by his mustache more than anything else, he would be, I think, reviled. My question is, should we still think of him as that kind of dude?
Which kind of dude?
As your sort of Mailer Hemingway kind of, you know, likely to be torn to shreds in, you know, left-leaning, high-end critical journals kind of dude, or is it okay because it's Herzog, basically?
Well, I would be skeptical. Let's say this: I, having looked into this guy for a while, can find like a few cases where I feel like he stepped over the line into immorality in his. I mean, he gets closer than many for sure, but in his oeuvre, I find him to have been a pretty stand-up dude, even when handling.
Yeah,
but there's
his you know,
there's a film he made which is exploitation, called Even Dwarfs Started Small, which is a film with a black and white film. I think it's a silent film, and it basically is a bunch of dwarves being in like just basically doing stunts and existing in a very surreal atmosphere. And there's pyrotechnics and there's cars, so you know, people got run over, people got caught on fire in the production of this film. And a famous story which is told about him is that recognizing the ordeal he put these guys through, he said, "If there are no more accidents on this set by the time we have finished, I will throw myself into a cactus patch," which he did. So you know, there is
right, as if that's.
It does not mean that he didn't keep a dangerous film set. But
Right.
that said, many people keep dangerous film sets. You know, actors get lit on fire a lot. It's not that unusual.
Yeah.
It's just, and no one was killed. No one was permanently hurt, as
Right.
far as I know. But
I'm not even. I mean, but continue, please. Yeah.
but there is something. There's something real about that persona of his, right? Like
Yeah, exactly.
he genuinely has this kind of tit for tat,
Like,
I am not necessarily greater than you kind of attitude, which helps, and it's a perspective which I think is felt in his films. He never feels to me to be more than an equal to his subject, even when he acknowledges that as the filmmaker he has all the power.
yes.
And this is kind of leading me to the answer to the first question, which is certainly an ingredient of what I think is great about his art is this persona of his and how it figures into what he does. But also, I don't know if I would never say that that's the completeness of what makes him a great filmmaker. You know, he also he speaks a cinematic language all his own, and there are many things about that language that I value. And you know, speaking a language all your own is kind of the mark of any great artist. And to try to describe his, a critic I read recently described it without really explaining what they meant as decidedly analog. And I felt that, and I've been trying to decode it for a little while. But one thing that I like is that he's always very honest about how his camera got where his camera is. Like Burden of Dreams is a good example. He spends a lot of time talking about why the shots look the way they do, and like what the limitations were on the camera. And there are shots of the crew moving in to the place. He frequently in documentaries just explains things that happened to the crew. And importantly, I think he knows that there's no such thing as putting someone on camera and having them act the way they would if they weren't on camera. Like he lets people just be really uncomfortable on camera and behave however they want to behave. The Mortician from Grizzly Man, obviously a great example. The dude has no idea what to do with his hands at any point when he's on camera. And I think in that way Herzog's films show us a kind of truth that not that many films show us.
Cool. I like that. I like that. I would say that I'm a little bit put off by his inclination. As you said, he reveals the art as he goes along, but that means that everything that he does is about the movie to a certain extent, to a greater or lesser extent.
Sure.
Which I find wearying. I find art about art to be wearying, and art is obviously so important to him as a sort of a central, conceit of his personal constellation of motivations, that it becomes, it becomes a little bit, like broken recordy, a little bit changer le disque, please. And I am not as sensitive to the vocabulary of camera work as you are. I want to sort of, and the other thing is that I have.
For real? Why would you ever ask someone to park their truck here? I'm not going to do this.
Oh my goodness!
Should I attempt it?
Well, let me finish my sentence at least. An anecdote that we did not share is the time that he was giving a lecture to students, and these students were like, what should you do if you don't have the resources, if you're coming from a place where you don't have the ability to have the equipment or the manpower or whatever to do, to make a film. And his response was that you should probably, if you really want to make the art, then you'll break the law in order to do so.
Yes.
Which is both inspiring on a certain level and also betrays, I think, a completely blithe self-centeredness about who he is, what his place in the world, what his talent justifies.
Yeah.
Whoa!
Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
That was, I think, a glitch. Some kind of speedrun glitch, fast reverse. How did I do it? I'll never be able to recreate that.
It's like the boost at the beginning of Mario Kart, the original Mario Kart.
But I mean, he does break laws quite often. There's an example that he, like, not too early in his career, shot in China without a permit, which is
it's like, he can get away with that because it's him.
I suppose.
And other people would not be able to. And his particular sort of,
how is this done,
milieu and worldview necessitate him not paying attention to certain things.
Sure.
And instead making larger oracular pronouncements about humanity and the way that things work, which threaten to miss the forest for the trees.
Right.
But I, personally, still enjoy his work, and also all of your impressions of him.
Cool.
And Bad Lieutenant was indeed a very good movie.
We got through this whole movie without explaining, like, the big thing did I just say this whole movie? We got through this without explaining what the fuck he was doing in Burden of Dreams. That was so impressive.
Watch Burden of Dreams.
Yeah, go watch it.
Yeah. I mean, or Fitzcarraldo, or both.
Yeah, both.
Yeah.
Both good.
Listen to the song The Moments Right about Klaus Kinski.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.